Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I've had my share of spooky experiences. I posted about them once before on /x/ a year or two ago. Before, I can't sleep. Look to my door, see the silhouette of a woman in what looks like a wedding dress standing in my doorway facing me. Years later, tell my parents. They claim to have seen the same figure several times in that apartment, once even floating over them in the middle of the night. B13 sleeping at night, wake up by some weight coming down on my feet. Look, see nobody there, but the weight persists. Assume it's that cat and I can't see her through the blanket. Notice the cat right next to me when I try to fall back to sleep. Also notice the weight is significantly heavier than a cat, more like someone sitting. Pretend I don't know shit and try to sleep anyways. Most stuff didn't really start until I was 20 though. Next part with the good stuff, B20. Me and two friends bought a shitty $20 Ouija board from Toys R Us to goof around. For the purpose of the story, let's call my friends X and Y. We decided to play at a third friend's house cause we're all cowards, but he never picks up the phone. He lives out in the middle of farmland, orchards and fields all around. We decided to play in a nut orchard nearby. We set up and started playing in the car. Hear animals running around the car outside. Assume it's the third friend's dogs. We were right next door to his house. Nothing happens. I get the idea that whatever it is we would be contacting can't get into the car. Convince my fiends to set the game up on top of the trunk, use our phones for light. No animals outside. Planchette moves. Claims to be a demon named Zozo. I'm skeptical. It talks shit about X's dad's past. Way over the line personal shit. X looks shocked. I assume Y is screwing with him or X is faking it. It gets cold as ice. We're in the middle of summer. I'm getting bored of the theatrics. I'm 100% certain someone is bullshitting. Then the planchette starts to lift. Literally floats about 1.5 inches over the board. My phone dies and one of our lights goes out. Everyone yells, but we keep going. We know we're not supposed to let go of the planchette until we say goodbye. When I see the floating, I get excited and try to learn more. Ask more questions, don't get straight answers. Ask, are you the only thing with us here? Planchette goes super fast to goodbye, faster than any of us could have pulled it. We went back to the car. 50 moths are in there, way too many for it to just be bugs that flew in when we opened the doors. Once we shoo them all out of the car, we go get drunk and move on with our night. The next day we're hanging out again. Y is running late, so X calls him. X is confused and puts the phone on speaker. A voice is talking, but it isn't Y's. Sounds like a Jawa mixed with an old lady. Y gets there shortly after and comes out complaining about how X needs to stop answering his phone with that weird voice. X never got a call from Y. Y claims to not have gotten X's call. Y calls X to show what the voice was. Similar gibberish as the first one, but significantly deeper. Y's name is the only part that's clearly understood. About a year later, the three of us got an apartment together. One night, X is trying to impress some girl and we all pull out the old shitty Ouija from the first time. End up talking to some ghost named Cecilia. She's cool, literally spells out homie. We end up playing truth or dare with her cause IDK she missed human interaction and shitty stuff like that from being alive. Dares Y to make out with the girl X brought over. Y had a girlfriend, they both refused, we moved on. 4 hours pass and I need to piss. I keep trying to let it say goodbye, telling it we'll be back. She says to just go and it'll be fine. Screw it. I go. Come back and everyone's freaking out. It's Zozo, talks shit. Says he opened a portal and we'll all be doomed unless we make a deal for him to close it. For a demon, he sounds like he's full of shit. Says Y and that girl have to play 7 minutes in heaven like we're all kids or something. Eventually we convince them that to do that they need to let go, and we'll only let go of it and say goodbye. It works. Girl goes home. We all go to sleep. Don't give two shits about Zozo. BTW, I've looked him up and it turns out Zozo is an actual thing other people have talked to, associated with tricking people over the Ouija. The next day the girl is back. We're debating what happened the night before. Y says Cecilia wasn't real, but Zozo was just trying to gain our trust. I say Ghost Homie was real, but Zozo came later. End up deciding to play again to prove it. Zozo and Cecilia are back. Zozo says he'll take her soul if they don't fulfill the deal we lied to him about the night before. They refuse again. Zozo then asks us to cut off my finger instead. I tell him to fuck off. Asks us to kill X. Nope. End up agreeing to the original thing, and just like the night before, we close the game and don't do it. I sit down and find a playing card with a 7. The girl freaks out and claims it's a sign. Just a coincidence. She finds another 7. Unlikely, but still means nothing. To make a point, Y pulls out a card from the mismatched deck we have on hand for drinking games, pulls out another 7. They agree to make out in the closet for 7 minutes. Ever since then, I occasionally see Cecilia around me. I try not to think about it too much, and it mainly happens when I'm high. She's usually peeking around a corner with a messed up, twisted face and a creepy-ass smile. But as soon as you focus on her, she's gone. Recently, it's been getting weirder and harder to ignore. Roughly 3 months ago. I work seasonally, so I travel to some resort, work for a few months, and live in a shitty tiny room they give me. Was in Alaska, far from where I played the Ouija and where Cecilia was. One day I'm alone in my room, get up to head out. As soon as I stand up, I see her reflection standing behind me on the TV. As soon as I notice her, the light goes out. Not like the bulb went out, but the actual switch itself was physically switched off. 2 weeks ago, back in California, visiting my parents between seasons. In the middle of the night, I feel an ice-cold hand grab the back of my shirt. Nothing else since, but I'm definitely spooked, and whether it's the ghost homie or not, it's definitely following me. Also, about a year ago, Y and I had another apartment with his fiancée and her sister. Wake up in the middle of the night. See what can only be described as a white dementor floating above me. Pull my go-to move and pretend I don't see it and try to go to sleep. The next morning, I looked up the place I was at, and about 15 years before, some little kid got a hold of their dad's gun and ended up dying when playing with it.
When I was 6, my little brother passed away, and my dad uprooted our family from California to move to Kentucky. We lived in this trailer out in the country for a year before moving into town. This is where it gets interesting. We moved into this house that was built in the 1800s. Surprisingly enough, the house wasn't very haunted. Nothing moved with an unseen force, no doors slamming. But I always felt this presence. I've seen a lady in my parents' room a lot, but that's really all there was with the paranormal aspects of the house. Fast forward a few years. I'm 10 years old, hanging out with some neighbor kids and getting bored off our asses. Someone decides we should break into the abandoned house behind our backyard. The yellow house. There was a utility room towards the back, pretty much just a few feet from our shed. From what I remember, I believe there was a broken door that led to it, and that was our only way in and out. Inside was a window into the actual house. It had boxes of stuff, nails, insulation foam, hammers, tools. We explored for a bit, and then I found this picture. As soon as I looked at it, I started to get dizzy. Everything felt surreal. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt weird, like I was intruding. It was a picture of this family. Looked like it was taken in the 70s. I can't show you all the pic because it's been 11 years and that house, along with my old house, got torn down. If you're still interested, I'll type up the next post ASAP. Can't promise it'll be fast as I didn't plan on storytelling today. Give me a moment. I need a cigarette break. Okay. I dropped the picture and left. Told my friends to go home and that I needed to do homework. I avoided looking at that house the rest of the day. The next day, I told my older brother about the yellow house and that there was a bunch of junk in the utility room. Didn't tell him about the creepy vibes, though. We like to build stuff, like tree houses and dog houses. So he persuades me to go with him this time to explore the rest of the house and take some of the junk to use later. We go back into the utility room, look around, and my brother has the bright idea to break the window that led into the house. We smashed the glass out and climbed inside. Inside, there was stuff everywhere. First, My Little Pony toys, puzzles, junk, trash bags full of more junk. We were in there for hours before we trekked back home through the weeds with our goodies. I completely forgot about the weird feeling. Almost felt lured to explore more. Well, we did. It became a hangout of sorts. Through the years, we went over there less and less. Finally, at age 12, I completely stopped. I had this calico cat named Crystal. She was very tame and careful with her claws. One day, she went missing for days, and I found her lurking around that yellow house. I ran after her and followed her into the house. She stopped at one of the rooms and turned to me and hissed. It was very unlike her at the time. I went to pick her up and she freaked out, scratching deep into my wrist. Pretty sure she hit a vein. She bolted out as I was crying and putting pressure on my hand. I bled a lot. There was a small puddle of blood beneath me on the floor. Went back home and my parents patched me up. I still have the scar. Days later, I went in there for the last time and the blood had disappeared. Didn't think much of it when I was young. After that, I kept seeing someone peeking out that room's window, which faces our backyard. Fast forward through the years. I went to a foster home at age 14. Went to live with my dad at age 16. It was out in the country. Fast forward all the way until I'm 19 and going to college. I have a fiancée and we hang out at my mom's house, who still lives in that old house. The yellow one is torn down at this point. We brought some friends along on that day, S and C, who were together, both from Indiana. They meet us at my mom's place and we hang out. Suddenly S says, "There's a demon on the lot behind our house." I'm skeptical, of course, but intrigued. We walk out to the backyard and C starts acting weird. We think she was either faking it or possessed. We smoke some cigarettes and come back in. All of the sudden, S is like salt all the doorways and windows. Now. Everyone freaks except for me. I'm standing in the back hallway near S, watching people spread salt everywhere. I look at him to say something when I hear a woman's voice say, "Scott." I keep it to myself until Scott says that his grandma said, "Scott, it's done. Everything's fine." Well, I believed him at that point, and I looked out the back window. By the tree that used to be in the front yard of the yellow house was this thing, like a man, but not a man. He was tall and completely black, like a shadow, and I could just make out these red little dots that must have been his eyes. He just stood there, staring at us. It seemed like he couldn't move, or that he couldn't go on my mom's property. I turned to tell the group, and he disappeared. Okay, that's it. That's my story.
I need help. This happened in January. I was sent to military academy. Everyone in this place is miserable. It's like jail. There is a clear hell on earth vibe. There have been many stories of people spotting ghosts and demons in this place. Maybe I'll share them, but we're focusing on this one, because I was directly involved in it. I used to be a huge skeptic before going to this place, but now I'm paranoid. It scared me /X/. I get scared to think of it. Let me begin by telling one of those other stories. It ties into this one. My friend, a very obese, very pale kid, who was at the academy months before I arrived, I enrolled late in the year, claimed to spot something paranormal. Apparently one day in the fall the power went out. All electricity was out for hours. My friend skipped sports and was sneaking into his room. He said he felt like the only one on the floor. As he was entering his room code, he looked down the PG hallway, and at the end of the hallway, staring out the window, was this black, humanoid figure. It was short. He claimed it impossible to make out who it was. He shouted, "Ah, hello, Mr. PG, sir. How are you?" in a joking way. No answer. It kept staring out the window. He repeated himself and held his hand out, saying, "I'm going to come shake your hand, good sir." It was just his kind of humor. Anyways, he goes down the hall to the thing. He says somehow he swears he didn't notice it until he actually got there, but the thing was gone. He stared out the window to the forest for a second, then decided to get back to his room because someone on the camera could spot him skipping. But later we found out the PG hallway camera I'd actually busted. Anyways, so he turns around and freezes. The thing is now at the opposite end of the hall in front of his door, staring at him. He left down the staircase. He told me this within a month of coming there. I didn't believe him. I'll continue with my story. This happened a couple months later. It was January now. For the whole winter we had no heat. We were freezing. Everyone was miserable and sad. I never had serious thoughts of self-termination before. I'm sure I wasn't the only one. Around 2 a.m., I had to use the bathroom. I stepped out into the hallway. The bathroom was in the PG hallway, which was on my floor. I walk out of my room and leave the door open. The hallway is dimly lit. There is no light in my hallway, but there is in the PG hallway slightly lighting my hallway. I could still see things clearly, so I walk 6 or 7 feet down the hall to the bathroom. I stop. I notice that there is this small guy staring at me. At the corner where my hall and the PG hall intersect is his head poking out the corner. His hands are on the wall. I can see the detail of the brick that his hands are touching, but this guy was made of pure darkness. I couldn't make out any features. I spent a good 2 minutes trying to recognize him, because it was a small student population, and everyone knew each other. I tried so hard to figure him out, but he was so dark I just couldn't make out any features. Then I realized that me and this thing have basically been staring at each other for 2 whole minutes. He was staring right into my eyes, though I couldn't see his eyes. I knew he was staring into mine. I then did a shrug and said, "What the Who are you?" I demanded. No response. "What the duck are you doing?" No response. I angrily said, "Hey," and took a step forward. He was gone. He moved so fast I barely noticed. Then boom, the metal bathroom door that was like 50 pounds flung open. I have trouble opening it sometimes, and he flung it open so hard I swear he could have ripped it off the hinges, even though he was like 4 feet. So I chased it into the bathroom. Okay, let me wrap it up quickly. I ran into the bathroom, closed the door behind me, searched the entire place, opened up all the stalls and searched the showers. But one stall was occupied. I waited for the person to come out. It was my friend from the first story. Now he is too tall, big and white to be this thing. "Hey, Anon," he said, and asked him if he heard anyone come in. "Yeah, someone threw open the bathroom door." Explained to him what happened. We searched the bathroom again. No luck. Bathroom has no windows. He could have ran down the stairs. Maybe. That's it. Thanks for reading. I want to know what it was.
Last year, 1 a.m., out walking with my girlfriend in her small town. We stop at the bridge and the pic related. Really dark out 'cause clouds, only light is the street lights on the bridge. We're at about midpoint on the bridge, maybe a little closer to the end. No cars because everything is dead after about 10 p.m. See some guy standing at the end of the bridge. We're talking and stuff, but she keeps looking at the guy walking toward us. I stop and look down the bridge. Something is really off about him. He doesn't seem right. My girlfriend says, "I think I know him." I start to get sick to my stomach because of this weird smell that's filling the air. He's close enough where I should be able to see his face. Neither of us can, we can see him fine, but it looks like someone took like a blur tool and applied it to his face. He looked like your typical country guy. Blue jeans, heavy work coat that's unzipped, brown beat-up ball cap, about 6 foot tall. He's getting to about 10 feet away and suddenly just vanishes. I what, girlfriend, what's? A car drives by and then slows down near the end of the bridge. Dude is back at the end of the bridge. He starts walking toward us again, realizing the off thing isn't only that's a jumper, but the fact he doesn't walk, just kind of shambles along the road. He gets close-ish before I grab her and we leave. We start walking and he's getting really close. We get to the end of the bridge and he just vanishes again. She tells a friend about it, and her friend talks about demons being on the bridge and shit happening. I'll add those in another post if anyone wants to know. Side note, a few weeks later was Halloween, and when we talked past the bridge, a crowd of people were gathered around to try and see the demon. I looked down and saw the person just standing on the bridge. Was thoroughly spooked. The stuff related to the bridge, so I'm not from the area so I can't validate any of these, but I've talked to the people and one woman still has scars from what happened. From what I've been told, the guy has been sighted not only on the bridge but at several points along the road after the bridge. For info's sake, both roads beyond the bridge are definitely the sticks. A lot of the, "I'll shoot a man and bury him in my yard." People live there and there is definitely a presence of witchcraft as well. Be early 70s. An older woman gets brutally murdered along that road and the body was never found. The guy that was sighted around the time of the murder matches the description of the dude we saw. Some people say he offed himself somehow, again no body. Be the 80s. 2 girls walking home from school, get off the bridge and turn left. It's in the fall and dark out. They're joking around talking about whatever teenage girls go on about. From behind them they hear a whisper of, "Run!" They don't run. One of the girls was lifted off of her feet and thrown in the ditch. Screams for help, cuts appear on her face. Other girl runs down the road and gets a neighbor. They run out and find her unconscious in the ditch with bleeding cuts on her back. Last one that I was told. Be around 96 or 97. For anyone who remembers World Championship Wrestling, those were great years. Some kids decide to do a summoning ritual. It possesses one of the kids. They jump into the river and drown.
Brutally murdered. Body never found. How do you know someone is brutally murdered if there's no body?
Blood everywhere, signs of a struggle. Possible ripped clothing, screams coming from the house. Signs someone was brutally murdered.
That just sounds like a good night in.
Be me. Night shift at gas station at previous wagey job. Weird shit happens sometimes. Crackheads in general. Had a few paranormal stuff happen. Crackhead walks in. New crackhead, never seen this crackhead before, but know it's a crackhead. Has that addict twitch and scratch, looks paranoid. Starts speaking in crazy babble. He's here, he's here, he's here, he's here, the guy yells. Gets out of the store and books it down the street. Okay, that was weird. Look towards the door of the cooler section. GIF related. See a literal shadow demon inside of the cooler. The door entrance is glass. Blink. It's gone. Power goes out a few times after that. It's not windy. It was a clear night. Heard some knocks. Did not bother going into the cooler that night. Get shit from my boss for not stocking. Play it off as not feeling good. First time I didn't do it.
When I was about 10 years old, my father took me on a fishing trip one day, something we usually do once per month. I got the buckets ready as he prepared the net to throw it into the trench. Man-made irrigation canal. After he finished preparing the net, he threw it into the water and slowly dragged it up the bank of the trench. As he was pulling up the net, his expression changed to that of slight fear, and I knew why. In the nets were 3 crabs. The smallest of these crabs were 12 inches across the shell with some very large tentacles. The crabs resembled what we Guyanese called buck crabs, except they were 4 or 5 times larger than those we are accustomed to seeing. They were, in fact, hideous to look at. My father secured them on the net and we proceeded to his parents' home, which was just a few houses from where we were living at that time. When we arrived, he put the crabs on the ground and called his mother and sister to look at what he brought home. My aunt came out first, took a look at the crabs, began jumping up hysterically and shouted, "You brought home those demons things! Get them out of here!" My grandmother nearly fainted and begged my father to go and release them. Now I'll tell you why my father showed fear. My aunt behaved hysterically, and my grandmother nearly fainted. My father's grandfather usually went to fish in the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, as a means of supplementing his food source, as the low wage that was earned from cutting sugar cane was not enough to support his large family. Before my father was born, my grandfather went on one of these exercises and caught a rather large crab. This crab measured over 16 inches across its back. So he put the crab into a quake, a bamboo basket with a tightly closed cover, and proceeded home to show his family his great catch. When he reached home, he was extremely tired, which was strange as he usually fetched heavier loads over longer distances. He set the quake down and sat next to it to take a rest. All of a sudden he was twisted backwards with his belly up in the air and his heels reached the back of his head. Naturally, his wife and children were scared and frantic. Then a voice came out of the quake asking him why he disturbed it, the crab. Well, he couldn't really answer. His wife was now screaming louder and running around like a headless chicken. A neighbor heard the commotion and came over. He asked the crab what it wanted to, which it replied, that it must be put back at the exact location from where it was taken from before it was released by my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather gave the neighbor the direction to where the crab was caught. He then picked up the quake and proceeded to the location. Based on the timing given, it seemed that as soon as the crab reached its hole, it released the hold it had on my great-grandfather. That was the last time anyone in the family brought home an abnormal creature. I'm not sure if my father released the crabs we caught that day, as we had crab stew sometime later that week.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes. midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.